Hello and welcome live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. You're tuned into the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. Please interact with us on our various social media platforms throughout the show and throughout the week using our hashtag #TheWeekAhead or @TheWeekAhead. Let's get straight into it. Right, let's start things off. On Monday, the members affiliated to the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union, ZANU, and the United National Transport Union, ZANU, will be embarking on a strike. Both unions have turned down Transnet's offer of a 3 to 4% wage increase. They say the offer is well below South Africa's annual inflation rate, which was 7.6% in August. Perhaps for this and more, we are joined by the General Secretary of ZANU, Cobus van Vuuren, and Anele Kit, Deputy General Secretary of ZANU. Well, a very good afternoon to the both of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC. Cobus, let me start the conversation with you. After weeks of talks and deadlocks, we're finally here. Perhaps you can walk us through what's the rollout strike plan for Monday.
So good afternoon, Lisa and the viewers. So at this point in time, we are still awaiting the picketing rules, which we've engaged upon a couple of times. However, that has not been finalized yet. So our members and the ZANU members will be gathering at the Transnet premises. There will be a social gathering and there will be no picketing taking place as the picketing rules have not been agreed yet. So come Monday morning, the strike will continue and the people will be gathering at the Transnet different premises all over South Africa.
All right, Anele, let me bring you into the conversation. Thank you for also being part of this discussion. We were told that you're also going to be meeting with the CCMA on Monday. And perhaps you can walk us through, what you want to discuss with them. This is, you're obviously also waiting some of the more finer details.
Look, in terms of the Labour Relations Act, the CCMA have a right to offer assistance if parties are not agreeing in terms of the dispute. So yes, the strike is going to continue, but there will be a facilitation. On the other hand, supported by the CCMA or facilitated by the CCMA in trying to make it a point that they are helping parties to find each other.
Now, obviously, given the state of South Africa, and perhaps also as we look at, bargaining power and perhaps what's at stake here, Anele, how would you weigh in on, whether the strike is justifiable or not? Just given that Transnet says they can only offer 3 to 4%, how do you weigh in on that?
No, look, we are consistent in making our point here that workers of Transnet are working very hard in making sure that Transnet makes a revenue, but the decisions that are taken at management level, whereby they employ people with exorbitant salaries and making sure that they milk the organization, it can't be correct that workers now, they need to care about the ailing economy. An economy that affects them negatively. We want our members to earn decent salaries so that they can be able to participate meaningfully in the economy of the country.
So, Cobus, on the back of what Anele's just echoed, how would you weigh in on that? I mean, in my introduction, I did say that the South Africa's annual inflation rate sits at about 7.6%. So how would you counter that sentiment?
So if you look at where Transnet is currently, we must not lose the context of how they have arrived where they are. So looking at a Transnet that has been looted throughout the state capture and the increases that they are offering the bargaining unit employees versus the increases that they are offering the higher level managers. If you look at the increase of 4% on the lowest level, those employees will get a couple of R100 extra a month. And that should cover the CPI, the inflation, the increase in petrol that is running at over a 25% increase in the last couple of months or year. And then compare that to a 3% increase of the senior more managers. where you're talking about 10,000s of rands per month. So we can't say that our bargaining unit employees should get 300 or 400 rand a month increase, whereas you look at the senior managers, you're looking at tens of thousands of rands of increase. So with the cost of living, CPI currently running at 7.6%, and all the other elements of how the cost of living has increased. You're looking at medical aid, you're looking at the traveling with the petrol, you're looking at housing. 3 or 4% is just not sufficient to cover all of those increases in the cost of living. And it is just, if this increase is implemented, it will just impoverish our people even more. And you can't justify giving higher level managers tens of thousands of rands of increase a month and bargaining unit employees a couple of hundred rand. It just does not make sense.
So Kobus, just on the back of that, Transnet declaring a force majeure at airports, not new as they're looking to scale down. This is obviously also likely to impact on bulk exports. Do you think this is going to work in your advantage in any way?
So you must remember that strike action is always a last resort for labor. We have gone through an extensive process of negotiation, which has been consistently being delayed by Transnet. We were supposed to start the negotiation process in November 2021. We eventually only started at the end of May, 2 months after the increases were supposed to be implemented. So the strike action is the last resort that labor can utilize to exert pressure to ensure that our members get an increase that is palatable and that is aligned with the cost of living.
All right, so Anele, let me just quickly bring you back into the conversation before we wrap up. I mean, these obviously have consequences, both intended and unintended. Perhaps you can just walk through what the impact is going to have and be rather on the public as of Monday.
No, it's so unfortunate that we had to arrive at this point. As my colleague has just said now, as unions, we don't want to go on strike because we understand the impact, the severe impact that the strike can cause both to our members, but to the public at large. But unfortunately, you know, workers they have no choice when the situation is beyond their control. They have to demonstrate and fight for what is due to them.
All right. So with that said, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC. Perhaps just giving us a preview of what we can expect this ahead of Monday. Again, we're going to leave the conversation there for now. But General Secretary of UNTU, Kobus van Vuuren, Anele Kit from the Deputy Secretary General of SATAU, giving us an update. Again, we heard from them on Monday. Members affiliated to SATAU and UNTU will embark on a strike. Again, both unions have turned down Transnet offer of a 3 to 4% wage increase. A developing story we'll continue to monitor here on the SABC. Again, thank you very much to them for their time. So the conversation ends there. Let's take a quick ad break. There's more on the other side. Upon our return, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Right, welcome back. The week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson, continues. In other news now, non-profit organization Defend Our Democracy will on Monday launch the electoral reform campaign. The organization will be calling on MPs to reject the electoral amendment bill before Parliament. MPs expected to vote on this bill later this month. But to tell us more about this campaign, we're joined by Executive Secretary of Council for Advancement of South African Constitution, or CASAC, Lawson Naidoo. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us on the SABC.
Thank you very much.
Lawson, many scholars and experts have weighed in about the need for a fair electoral system. Perhaps what is being tabled so far is in fact flawed. And I wonder if you could contextualize that for us before we continue. Why so?
Well, this initiative stems from a judgment of the Constitutional Court in June 2020, when the court ruled that provision needs to be made for independent candidates or individuals who are not standing on party lists to be able to contest elections at the national and provincial level. in the same way that they are able to do so at a local government level. And the bill that has been put forward before Parliament now seeks to do as little as possible to amend the current party list system simply by incorporating independent candidates and asking them to contest is effectively what a province-wide constituency. So a whole province counts as one constituency, and independent candidates will contest in those against political parties. And this is been deemed to be unfair by a number of legal experts because the system is not designed to properly accommodate independent candidates. It's unfair on them. They, for example, will require more votes to secure a seat than a political party would. And any excess votes that an independent candidate gets will be discarded to the benefit of the larger parties in particular. So the bill that is currently before Parliament and which was approved by the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs on Friday is fundamentally flawed. It's likely to face constitutional challenge. And that in itself places the elections that are scheduled for 2024 at some risk. We're therefore appealing to members of Parliament not to pass the bill in its current form. We're also going to ask the President not to sign this bill into law if in fact it is passed by Parliament, because it is flawed, and we need to go back to the drawing board to put together a compliant electoral model that will satisfy the needs of the country. Now, many of us are proposing some form of a constituency-based system. And whilst we recognize that it's not going to be possible to have such a system in place before the 2024 elections, we need to have perhaps an interim measure with further meaningful reform to take place thereafter.
So, Lawson, before we get into some of those recommendations, in conjunction with what you've expressed in an article dated the 11th of September, I mean, you've really written about issues of regarding the gaps of accountability that's highlighted as a weakness in our electoral reform. In essence, why are you then calling for MPs to reject this electoral amendment bill, given its unintended or intended consequences, perhaps also for our democracy in the long run?
Well, as you point out, Liesl, the ZANU Commission has pointed to a fundamental flaw in our system at the moment, which is the accountability deficit. And the Chief Justice in his report spoke at length in those reports about how Parliament failed to correct the wrongdoing, even when it was before their very eyes, because the party list system enables parties to dictate to their members how they should behave. And unfortunately, the ANC instructed its members at the time not to deal with these allegations of state capture. And therefore, a system, a constituency-based model is what is required to create a closer link between members of Parliament and people who put them there. At the moment, those MPs account to political parties and not to the electorate. And this is an issue that has been been lobbied for and argued for 2 decades now, starting with the Van report in 2002 and various other panels that have looked at Parliament, including the Kgalema Motlanthe high-level panel in 2017. Chief Justice Zondo has recommended a constituency system now in his report. And just last year, the Minister of Home Affairs established a ministerial advisory committee, which also recommended a constituency-based system. At least the majority of the members of that committee did. But those have all been ignored. And what we see in this legislation is a system that exists nowhere else in the world, because it is unworkable. It is fundamentally unfair. And members of Parliament need to take the concerns of citizens into account, because ultimately an electoral system is not there for the benefit of political parties, but is there to enable voters and the electorate to express themselves in a meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the Defend Our Democracy conference held in July, delegates adopted a declaration asserting that South Africa's constitution was under direct threat, citing issues of corruption, poor service delivery, even compromised politicians, amongst many others, which have obviously weakened our democracy. And as we look at, ways to deepen the relationship between constituencies and their representatives to ensure this accountability, what electoral reforms are on the cards, given the fact that you've spoken that we probably need an interim version, given the time constraints, etc. I mean, what are some of the values that we're looking at that we need to be expressed if we are to navigate this uncharted waters further?
Well, let me start, Liesl, by saying that, we've seen declining levels of electoral participation in our recent elections, from the 2019 national elections, the 2021 local government elections, declining levels of voter participation. And there's an alienation and a disjuncture between voters and political system at the moment. And I think by creating a closer link between voters and elected representatives, we can go some way towards reversing that trend. And it's therefore important that an electoral system that we adopt, and there's no electoral system that has a magic button that will allow accountability. That's a political process. But a constituency-based system will create that closer link and make MPs in particular take into consideration the concerns that I expect expressed by people in their constituencies. So the system needs to be based on, it needs to be simple, it needs to be fair, it needs to be inclusive, and it must promote accountability. The current system clearly fails to do that. We've been told that on numerous occasions. And members of parliament and political parties in particular are seeking to design a system that benefits them so that parties can still have control over their MPs, to the exclusion of the electorate. And that's something that we've got to change. And so a constituency system, whilst it's not going to be possible to have it put in place because you're going to have to demarcate constituency boundaries and the like by 2024, it's something that is desperately needed for the long-term health of our democracy.
Lawson, then just very quickly ahead of Monday, as we wrap up the conversation, perhaps you could just walk us through what the campaign, ultimately entails. Should MPs vote in favor or not? What are some of the worrying signs? What are some of the unintended consequences and risks that we face as a country then from here on to?
Well, what we seek to do with the campaign is really to explain in very simple terms to members of parliament why the bill that is on the table at the moment is inherently unfair. It's unlikely to pass constitutional muster because it treats independent candidates very differently to the way in which it treats political parties, and that to avoid a confrontation in the courts and in order to protect the 2024 elections, they need to go back to the drawing board, fix what's on the table. And many members of parliament and members of the executive even are not aware of the consequences, be they intended or unintended, of this piece of legislation in terms of how exactly votes are counted and how they are discarded, as I say, to the detriment of independent candidates. So this is a fundamental issue. Our system is premised on the notion that every vote should have equal value. In this system that is proposed, every vote will not have equal value, and that's a fundamental threat to our democracy.
All right, Lawson, thank you very much for unpacking that and more. Also wishing you all the best as Monday obviously edges closer. Lawson Naidoo, Executive Secretary for CASEC, just unpacking, what will be launched on Monday, the launch of the Electoral Reform Campaign. The organisation really seeks to be addressing MPs to reject the Electoral Amendment Bill before Parliament, where, as we know, MPs are expected to vote on this bill later this month. Again, really citing some of the issues that are currently existing with the current one being put forth to date. So we'll leave the conversation there, continue to monitor that and more as it is a developing story. But for now, though, let's take a quick ad break. There is more on the other side upon our return. We'll be right back. Right, welcome back. We continue now. The ANC in the Western Cape says it's ready to hold its long overdue provincial conference at the end of this month. The conference has been postponed several times already.
Branches in the Southern Cape, the Cape Town Metro and the Boland had challenges, lapsed membership, leadership dissolved or no leader at all, and bogus membership are some of the problems detected. The interim provincial committee says it has been busy rebuilding the structures. a task that seemed to have been neglected from at least 2016. But with the October deadline set by the National ANC executive fast approaching, they say the focus is on running a credible process with credible branches. They need no less than 70% of the branches in good standing to have convened.
They wanted it to be thorough and strict and follow the system constitution of the ANC to the latter and depart from the old, way of making things where we were trying to actually jump some stages or trying to do things which are not supposed to be done.
Kalago believes his task of building a credible political party in the province has been accomplished.
The fact that now ANC in the Western Cape were going to conference with 283 branch delegates, it means there's an organization existing. And then, of course, we will have, where as a leadership, were allocated 24 voting delegates. It means we're going with 300 and something voting delegates, something which is unheard for a long time in the Western Cape.
The ANC in the Western Cape has been having problems for a long time. In February this year, they disbanded one of their biggest wards, which is Dula Alma region. And they've been struggling for many years to even convene a conference so they can elect provincial leadership. So they're going into the national conference without provincial leadership.
This time, Kalago is convinced that nothing will prevent the provincial ANC Congress from going ahead. Thandiswa Mau, SABC, Cape Town.
Meanwhile, a South African legal expert, Dr. Llewellyn Curlewis, says that the Criminal Procedure Act allows for private prosecution of criminal cases as it guards against people taking the law into their own hands. But at the same time, the legislation also prevents personal vendettas from being conducted through the courts. Now, this comes as former President Jacob Zuma and advocate Billy Downer are set to face off in court following Zuma's private prosecution of the lead prosecutor in his graft trial. Zuma alleges that Downer leaked information on his medical condition to News 24 journalist Karen Moon, who's also been charged.
Zuma laid a criminal charge against advocate Downer in October last year and launched a private prosecution last month after the National Prosecuting Authority formally confirmed that it was declining to prosecute Downer. In terms of the Act, a private person has to prove a substantial and particular interest arising from an injury suffered due to the crime in order to launch a private prosecution.
By creating a situation where private individuals is entitled to prosecute in their own name, despite the fact that the state might decide to decline prosecution, exactly gives that, let's call it an outburst, or that situation where they can get the opportunity, regardless of the initial decline by the state, to have their day in court. And that prohibits taking the law into your own hands.
But private prosecutions are generally regarded as weak cases, says Dr. Curlewis. This is because the prosecuting authority uses a low benchmark for a decision at face value whether the accused has a case to answer.
Whenever a private prosecutor wants to do the job of the state on their behalf, then the courts usually frown upon it because it looks like personal vendetta. So you must then show to the court that you have an eagerness, a willingness and a readiness to see it end out.
And that also means that one has to put one's money where one's mouth is. The private prosecutor has to cover the legal fees of the accused up front. Advocate Downer has asked for R1 million.
Yes, that is exactly the purpose of that deposit, to facilitate and pay for the legal expenses, all the legal expenses of the defence legal team on the assumption that an acquittal follows.
Dr. Curlewis says the state can also take over the prosecution if during the course of the trial it becomes apparent that a successful prosecution is possible. Renee Heine, SABC News, Durban.
Our Johannesburg Mayor Dada Moreros says he is confident that by tomorrow water supply across the city will be back to normal. Several parts of Johannesburg are experiencing water shortages after reservoir levels dropped during the load shedding. Electrically powered water pumps are used to maintain these reservoir levels, and stage 2 water restrictions are in fact still in place. Moreros was speaking following the announcement of the city's new mayoral committee.
We're doing better today. It's only Crosby and those areas that are still affected. But we think come Monday, the water problem would have been absolutely resolved and everybody will have water. The challenges are, as we said on Friday, the hot weather conditions are contributing, because once the levels are pushed higher and we distribute, immediately the water gets finished. So we have to constantly push the levels in the what we call those things, the reservoirs. So we are doing better. We are confident that by Monday everybody will have water.
The family of an 11-year-old boy who died at a mine in Mamelodi is still reeling in shock and looking for answers. Katlego Matlanyane is believed to have drowned at the Mamelodi Quarries mine last month. Meanwhile, a heated confrontation ensued between the economic freedom fighters and mine officials over safety measures as well as accountability.
Katlego Matlanyane's family left devastated and traumatized.
We are still in shock. We are not all right. We still need comfort. You understand? We are not okay now. And then we are lost. We don't know what can we do.
11-year-old Matlanyane allegedly went missing on the 24th of September, Heritage Day. His family sought the help of a traditional healer to help find him, but with no success.
It was too much to find that child. I didn't believe it, even though that I managed to find him. I struggled that night. It was Heritage on the 24th. The whole night, feeling that his clothes are here. I was there at the ground.
Sadly, Katlego's lifeless body was discovered floating in this quarry the next day.
We found that dam or river, I don't know what to call it. But yes, there is a water and it's a dangerous place, a scary place. Even you are an elder, you will never go there and play there or swim there. I found Katlego there. It's why I found Katlego there, lying there on top of the water. He was not alive. He was dead.
The incident sent shockwaves through the community who fear that other children may suffer the same fate.
The owner of this mine must make a plan about this mine of her. So because of now we have many children here who are playing all over.
But in this statement, the mine says it will not be held liable for trespassers. The Mamelodi Quarries mine is just next to the Marry Me informal settlement. The EFF confronted the mine over poor safety measures around the quarry. The party claims that Katlego is not the first to die on the mine premises.
Where do they enter? Why do they enter?
They find ways to enter.
No.
Yes.
Like we can walk to that entrance. It's wide open. Anyone can enter there. Anyone. What is the regulation says about the quarry mine? They just say you must just put these stones and just make money.
No.
So why don't you have a fence here? Electric fence or maybe a wall that can prevent these children not to enter here. We are going to have maybe other people died here, you are not even aware.
No, that is definitely not true. We are working with the community and we've invited them in to create more awareness on safety from our side as well. But we are working within the strict regulations of the DMRE and according to what they say we need to do. We do not work on our own parameters. We work underneath government regulations.
Before a formal agreement could be made or a date for a meeting confirmed, he was whisked away, leaving the EFF fuming.
We're holding our hands. We're holding our hands. Leave them. You are very arrogant. You are very arrogant. You are racist. This is how you treat black people, bloody racist.
While the mine appealed for patience pending police investigations into the matter, the EFF has vowed to return and shut down the mine if their safety demands are not met. Patricia Fasage, SABC News, in Mamelodi, Pretoria.
Well, in other news, the community of Colchester outside Gqeberha and the Eastern Cape are concerned about having a place to bury their loved ones should they pass on. The existing cemetery is close to capacity, and there's a lack of control to the point where people digging graves can find the plot already occupied. The cemetery is also in a bad state. KBC Slengile has more on that story.
A final resting place. is supposed to be filled with peace and dignity, but the Colchester Cemetery is anything but that. The graveyard is on unstable ground, leading to tombstones collapsing. Graves have also become unrecognizable as they sink into the ground.
Graveyard, when I dig to 6 foot 16, I meet a coffin at the bottom, and I meet a coffin at the bottom. I say I may stop here now, and I stop on the graveyard because on the graveyard it's too full.
No one knows that there is a grave there, so you only see when you see the remains, so you can't fight with the person. All you can do is report it.
To be safe, we have to look for a place that maybe has a bush, and you chop down the bush yourself, and you stand a lesser chance of digging into a grave.
The municipality knows the land is unstable, but finding a suitable alternative will take time.
We've spoken to SANParks. We've started discussions, in fact, with SANParks because the land that we are currently using, historically, it is owned by SANParks. So the engagements that we've started with SANParks will enable SANParks to either lease the land to us or offer the land to us, but that's what we are busy currently doing. In terms of the burials themselves, we've advised that community there, the nearest cemetery to them is the Motherwell Cemetery.
The municipality says it is aware of the financial implications of using the alternative Motherwell Cemetery. But it says it is open to discussions on reducing tariffs to accommodate them. SABC News, Ngqeberha.
While staying in the Eastern Cape, migrants who own businesses in the Eastern Cape are fearing for their lives. This as criminals continue to target them on a daily basis. Kidnapping, murder and robbery, as well as hijacking, are just some of the crimes that they are subjected to. The migrants are demanding protection from law enforcement agencies. On that note, our reporter Lubabalo Dada spoke to foreign business owners and filed this report.
These men left their country of origin for greener pastures in South Africa. They allege they have been given a hostile reception. Many of their businesses have been vulnerable to attacks. Some owners got killed in the process, yet no justice for their losses.
They are breaking the shops, they are entering the shop, and they are demanding money. And if we don't have money in the shop, they are killing us. And we are opening case there. The case is not, we don't know why. We don't get any result from the cases. The people, those who are killing us and hijack us, and those who are doing crime to us, when we go there, we don't get any result from the court. Immediately they are coming by bail and they are coming to us to kill us again.
Ale Mukufebo was kidnapped 2 months ago. The robbers demanded a ransom of 600,000 rand. He managed to pay 30,000 rand to save his life.
Yeah, it's very painful. And I don't know why. Also, we are helping guys. In our shop, even now, how many 2 ladies and 3 guys, even now they are working. Also, we are helping them, but they are doing to us, they are kidnapping, they are beating like a flies, bruh.
We are very, very scared of this thing. We are really, we are in trouble. Even during the day, during the night, we are not sleeping safely. We are not even going along the road safely. We are scared of this thing. But I don't know how the government can manage this thing, because it is very difficult to us to face this kind of problem.
The province recorded 1,045 murder cases between January and March this year. Some of the victims are foreign nationals murdered during the business robberies.
A major challenge in relation to the robberies of spaza shops, which are mainly operated by foreign nationals in townships and far rural areas, whereby these shops do not have specific trading hours or are failing to adhere to the various municipal trading times, thus making them vulnerable to attacks. Another challenge in some of the business robberies are that when police do effect arrests, the complainants fail to attend court for various reasons, which sometimes result in the withdrawal of their cases. At times, it becomes a challenge to trace some of the witnesses.
Police have called on communities to join hands to ensure safety of all people. Lubabalo Dada, SABC News, Eastern Cape.
Right, let's take another ad break. We'll be back with more on the other side. Right, welcome back. The week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson, continues. Let's take a look at some of the stories further afield now. The US internet giant Google is cementing its dominance on the African continent with a new investment of 17 billion rand to improve its offerings to business and customers. The company announced that it is establishing a new Google Cloud region in South Africa, where this new investment will allow for the localization of applications as well as services. It will also improve the storage of data.
According to Google, the new cloud region will, among other things, help users across Africa to choose where they would like to store data.
The big news is the launch of the Google Cloud region. We've had a cloud business on the continent for quite some time, but we're now investing in a cloud region, which means we'll accelerate our cloud services. News around the cloud region is businesses rely on cloud technology to digitally transform how they do business. They access our compute infrastructure, they access machine learning services from us, artificial intelligence and digital skills, as well as data analytics. They're able to work with big data and improve customer experience.
What's quite important around this cloud region and its announcement is that we're bringing Google scale to Africa. And that fundamentally means that those organizations, whether with large enterprises, medium-sized organizations, or small startups, have now the option to participate in the cloud services that we will offer out of this region. We've commissioned a study through Alpha Beta Economics, and the study has revealed that this cloud region will contribute around $2.1 billion worth of contribution to South Africa's GDP. In parallel, it will create 40,000 jobs by the year 2030.
Google has recently brought Equinor subsea internet cable to Cape Town all the way from Portugal via Togo and Nigeria. According to Google South Africa, this is expected to widen internet access in African continent. African continent is lagging behind on the internet access, with an estimated 300 million people having internet access out of estimated 1.2 billion African continent's population. It is expected that the landing of this internet cable in South Africa will make significant economic contribution in the economy.
What that internet cable does is it trebles internet speeds, it'll reduce internet costs by about 20% or so, it'll create about 180,000 indirect jobs over the next 3 years, and the impact on the GDP will be about 0.32 percentage points.
Meanwhile, Google has been making inroads into South Africa and continent-wide entrepreneurship support. Through its Black Founders Fund, the tech giant has set aside over $4 million to assist black-owned tech startups businesses.
When Black Founders Fund came on, it was a great enabler because we were looking at how to expand into the continent. And it brought up exposure as far as networks within the continent as well. 2021 January, we were 3. We were about to close our business. We were out searching for funding. No one was hearing us. And fortunately, something just sparked. Looking at today, now we are 25 full-time employees in South Africa.
Furthermore, YouTube, a subsidiary of Google, has been offering a lucrative platform to content creators.
Starting from 0 subscribers, it took us 5 years to get to about 850,000 subscribers. So we're on our road to 1 million. Your content is going to demand you to expand your business. So essentially, when you have a YouTube page, you have a mini business. My business currently has employed 8 people, and we are looking to grow 8 people in the space of 5 years. I know to some people it sounds like, it's a few people, but essentially, if you think of it from this perspective, it's 8 families.
I'm a digital entrepreneur. I create content on YouTube. I started about in 2017. I've been doing it full time for the past 2 years. The biggest problem was monetizing and making it sustainable. But with the likes of YouTube and Google, we've obviously been able to learn how to make it sustainable and learn how to be the best type of content creator in the space. Luckily, I was a part of the YouTube Black Voices Class of 2021 last year. So I got seeding from YouTube, mentoring from YouTube, and it taught me how to operate as a digital content creator, but at the same time as a business.
Velimseni Mtiane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Lesotho's election results is moving at a relatively fast pace. Already 31 out of 80 results have been announced, with the probability of the 50% mark being crossed on the second day. Now, if the established pattern is anything to go by, the new arrival Revolution for Prosperity looks set for landslide victory. In his party launch, the leader and business tycoon Sam Matikane said he is ready to do in 5 years what has not been done in 20 years.
The campaign season has come and gone. The parties left nothing to chance in wooing supporters to their side. The DC promised stability, while ABC vowed to tackle poverty. But it is the RFP that seemed to have won the hearts of Basotho. They have thus far taken 30 out of 31 of the counted results, and are looking set for a landslide victory if they are to implement their manifesto.
My main stuff is what Basotho wants, which is the roads, the bridges, supply of water into their households, and many other things. And the other thing which is lacking in our town is the street lights.
While the results are relatively moving with speed, the electoral body IEC is allowed by law up to 7 days to declare the winner. Rabelang Khatebe, SABC News, Masego, Lesotho.
Zimbabwe's ruling ZANU PF party will be holding its elective congress later this month. It plans to elect new leaders ahead of the 2023 general election. Early indications are that party leader Emmerson Mnangagwa will retain his seat. Elections for the Central Committee, the party's highest decision-making body just outside of Congress, will happen at the weekend.
ZANU PF changing gears as it prepares for next year's general elections. It will hold Central Committee elections this weekend, ahead of its elective Congress at the end of the month.
Comrades, the Central Committee election processes must be approached with great diligence, with purpose and spirit of camaraderie. This is more so as the Central Committee is the highest organ of the party in between congresses.
With an estimated 3 million Zimbabweans living outside the country's borders, a new battleground is slowly emerging ahead of next year's crucial elections.
I commend our party structures in the diaspora, particularly in the United States of America and Canada, for organizing very vibrant meetings for me and my colleagues to address party structures at the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly recently.
But the opposition has maintained that the ruling ZANU PF is not being sincere in getting the diaspora to participate in the national election and denying millions the right to vote.
We want to see the diaspora vote. Let Zimbabweans in the diaspora be allowed to vote. There can never be taxation without representation. If you believe that we are getting remittances from the diaspora, we can't receive without giving. When we receive the remittances, we must give that right, the right to determine the government.
The current Zimbabwe Electoral Act excludes diaspora voting, and ZANU PF has already pronounced that a constitutional amendment is required to enable the diaspora to vote. Other SADC countries like Angola, Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa allow their citizens living abroad to vote in national elections. Sophie Mkwena, SABC News.
Meanwhile, the 193-member United Nations General Assembly will on Monday reconvene its emergency special session on the Ukraine and begin debate on a draft resolution that would condemn Russia's annexation of 4 regions in that country. A similar resolution failed in the Security Council just last week after Russia deployed its veto. The Western drafted resolution would condemn Russia's illegal so-called referenda and attempted illegal annexation in an effort that has drawn a sharp criticism from Moscow's UN envoy.
After Russia's expected veto in the Council last week, Western nations were quick to move the resolution to the General Assembly, where its special emergency session on Ukraine remains active.
This is not a moment to stand on the sidelines. This is a moment to stand up for the UN Charter, for its values, for its principles, and for its purposes. And if Russia chooses to shield itself from accountability, then we will take further steps in the General Assembly to send an unmistakable message to Moscow that the world is still on the side of defending sovereignty and protecting territorial integrity.
Unlike Security Council resolutions, GA texts are not legally binding, but provide a global barometer on key issues amid efforts to further isolate Russia at the UN.
The General Assembly resolution will have 2 important effects. One, I think, is that if there is a big majority against Russia, that will torpedo Vladimir Putin's claims to be a standard bearer for anti-colonial feeling. And it will secondly show that what's happening in Ukraine is not just a local conflict between Russia and NATO. It will show that the question of territorial integrity, which is what's on the line, is a matter of global concern.
An intense lobbying effort is underway behind the scenes, with Western nations seeking a supermajority in the Assembly, while Russian diplomats are pushing for a secret ballot instead of a public vote after its annexation of 4 partially occupied Ukrainian regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia.
We know that only a very few countries, such as Syria, are likely to actually vote with Russia. But the big question is, what do some major non-Western powers do? Will China support Russia or will it abstain? And if China abstains, is that a message to Moscow that Beijing is tired of this war? Similarly, India is potentially going to abstain, and that will be an important message to Russia from an important partner on the world stage. There's a big focus on Africa as well. Russia has been trying to persuade African countries that it is an ally in a long-term anti-colonial battle against the West. Ukraine and its friends are telling African diplomats, no, Russia is now fighting in an imperial war. You should be back in Kiev.
While the UN chief has been remarkably pointed in his criticism of Russia's annexation efforts.
It stands against everything the international community is meant to stand for. It flouts the purposes and principles of the United Nations. It is a dangerous escalation. It has no place in the modern world. It must not be accepted.
Only 100 countries voted in favor of a similar GA resolution in 2014, seeking to affirm Ukraine's territorial integrity after Russia similarly annexed Crimea.
In a letter to UN member states, Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia referred to this resolution as a sham and a clearly politicized and provocative development aimed at further dividing UN member states, proposing a secret ballot that could shield countries from further scrutiny depending on which way they vote. Western diplomats, though, have indicated that they expect a public vote once debate on the resolution concludes later next week. Sherman Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
And staying with our rolling coverage, Eskom says Stage 2 rolling blackouts will resume tomorrow from 4 p.m. until midnight. The power utility says this schedule of power cuts will be implemented until Wednesday. It says the load shedding period will be used to replenish generation reserves and to bolster generation capacity. And just like that, we've come to the end. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is where we're going to leave it for you today. Of course, we're back next weekend. But until then, it's goodbye for now. Do take care.